Hey guys, I wanted to touch base with you today. Something a little bit different. Another video will be rolling out on from the Cornerstones book, but right now, really wanted to touch base with you on some questions that came up from Sunday. Right. So, if we were to go into our Bible and we were going to be looking at the passage that we've been teaching on, you're going to see that as we've been going through the book of Matthew, you get to this part, right, on the testing. And it says the devil took him to the holy city, had him stand on the pinnacle of the temple, and he said, if you're the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it's written, he'll give his angels orders concerning you, and they'll support you with their hands, so you'll not strike your foot against a stone. And then you get to see, Jesus says, he told him, it is also written, do not test the Lord your God. Now, so on Sunday, I started talking about the fact that we will test God often, and really want to push on people who do certain or put God to the test based on situations in their own life. And I wasn't meaning to talk about, like, hey, I need direction, right? We're trying to make a distinction. If you go through our small groups this week on the sermon notes, we're trying to make a distinction between, like, God, I need some direction, and I need you to help me with this, and help me find the best situation to do a decision. Sometimes we have hard decisions in front of us, right? We have two good ones, and we need God to show us, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when we test God to be able to say something like, hey, I really am dead set on trying this sin out. But if you really want me to stop, you're going to need to intervene, right? Because the whole point of testing God is we're not trusting God. We're not allowing him to lead us. What we're asking for him to do is to intervene, to do something, and to really force his hand into the situation. If you really want me to stop, you're going to have to get up and stop me, right? Think about that in terms of like your kids too. So like if you're a parent and you've got kids, you say, hey, I need you to go to bed, right? And the kids are going to kind of sit there. And if they're listening and they're obeying, they're going to say, okay, I'll go. But, if they want to do it their own way, they're going to wait and try to force you to get up and to do something. And there you go. I mean, that's kind of like what we do is I'm dead set on doing something. I'm going to force God's hand to make me stop if he wants me to. Now, two big questions that came up that I think are interesting. They're somewhat tied to this conversation, right? Is the question of casting lots and testing God, or casting lots and putting out a fleece. So let's talk about this for a question. So by the way, when we talk about casting lots, right, we're talking about throwing the dice or something. We're not quite sure what that looked like in the Old Testament, by the way, but I want to talk about how that was used and maybe how you might see some parallels in your own situation. Because I'm going to make a distinction that this is not testing God. So let's look at the casting lots, right? As you'll see, there's two major verses about this that you'll see come out of the book of Proverbs. One is Proverbs 16:33. The lot is cast into the lap, but its very decision is from the Lord. And then casting the lot ends quarrels and separates powerful opponents. So let's talk about this for just a second. The two verses that are explicitly saying this is Proverbs is saying, you throw the dice or whatever they would have done or how they would have cast lots, right? You throw those, and ultimately, in God's providence, he's going to be over how those fall. Now, that's important. Now, we need to realize that when we talk about casting of lots, these are not arbitrary, I just need some quick decision, I'm just going to throw lots and see what happens. You think of the old Batman shows and the movie, Two-Face always got a coin that he's flipping. Boom, heads or tail, right? And so you see how that he makes his decisions, if you're going to live or die based on the coin. That's not what we're talking about here. This was a legitimate tool that God allowed for his people to use. Let me show you a couple references to this. You'll see in Leviticus 16, it was used for the Day of Atonement. One of this would have been like which goat gets which role, right? And so God is allowing for, here's how you'll pick and decide between the two. Here's another one. You'll see that the land of Israel was to be divided by lots. So when Israel's getting their territory, Moses had said, based on what the Lord had given him, that when they go to carve up Israel, they were going to cast lots And wherever those lots fell, that's how they determined who got what sections. Okay? Big, like where you're going to live. Like some of that was put out by lot. Now, let me explain this too. Lots are very impartial, right? Like notice that thing from Proverbs. Casting the lot ends quarrels, separates powerful opponents. Lots, the way they're meant to be, right, are meant to be kind of impartial decision making. I have no skin in the game. I'm not, if I throw the dice, it's what the dice are, right? If I throw the lots or whatever those are, that's what it is. I can't skew it one way or the other. And so if he gets a bigger piece or he gets a smaller piece, that's not me doing this. This is what it is. And so Proverbs says, and God's over every part of that, right? And that's what God used. So sometimes it was these difficult decisions where you need maybe somebody who you can't have somebody necessarily make that decision for you. So you do something like, God, we're going to throw this out. We're going to let whatever that hits, we're going to let that be, right? You'll see Joshua does this, and notice, and some of this is as he's doing this, dividing up the land too. Joshua casts lots in the presence of the Lord. Now that's key as well, right? Because we're doing this in the biblical model. It's not just kind of like, hey, heads or tails, whatever decision, we're just doing our own way, right? If you remember Psalm 91, it talks about as Satan quotes that, the context is somebody who commits their way to the Lord. So go back and think about this too. Even the casting of lots, even the use of that in the Old Testament is for people who are they're invoking the Lord, bringing them into this. Not just simply say, I want to do this, so if you don't want me to sin, you better throw a heads, right? No, they're saying, God, I want your will, and I need some clarity on this. And so, Lord, whatever this hits, this is what I'm going to do. And so there was a way to do that. But you do it in the presence of the Lord, and you're not forcing his hand. In those days, you're asking God to bring clarity to the situation, okay? Here's another one, right? The families were selected to move to Jerusalem by lot. That's a big thing. So like in the time of Nehemiah, as they're rebuilding Jerusalem and trying to repopulate the city, nobody wanted to be there. And so what they had to do is, well, okay, we're going to cast lots. And if it's your lot is hit, you're in the city. Move it out. So God used those situations. Now, one that was brought up to me and one that somebody wanted to ask about on Sunday was this one, right? Acts 1:26, Matthias is selected as Judas's replacement. And I've heard in the past people say, see, that was not a legitimate way. They should have held the spot for Paul. No, I don't think so at all. These were guys selected by Jesus to do this. There were no instructions either way on this, right? They prayerfully sought the Lord, they cast lots, and they did this. Paul's spot was not part of this, right? He was something other as well. So I don't think that was a bad decision, and I think God opened the door and allowed them to pick this individual, okay? So here's my opinion on casting lots. Do I think you should cast lots today? I think there's probably a good way to say that, like, if you've got two really good decisions in front of you and you can't do it, you can't figure it out, you've been praying and seeking God to try to help, I think there's a place for that, right? To just say, hey, Lord, I need help on this. And throw the lot and see what happens, right? Do something like that, like a simple thing. And just kind of trust God through it, right? I do think there's a place for it. Do I think you should make most of your decisions that way? No. But I do think there should be a lot of consideration, a lot of prayer through this. Now, one of the differences that the Old Testament and even those verses in Acts, they did not have, right, is none of those people had the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. Acts chapter 1, he hasn't come yet. He's there, next chapter, but not there. And so there is a little bit of a difference that we have now with the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, where I believe that God will lead you closer to a better decision than some of that. But there might be some times where, just cast a lot. And I think it might be a good habit, right? I got two decisions. They're not really important. How do I be as impartial as possible? Cast a lot. Let God handle that, okay? Now, one other one that came up in our conversations where people were asking me about this one, about the putting out of a fleece. Now, if you know the story, this is the story of Gideon. And so if you go and read Gideon, let me just go to the text for you because I think this is important to understand. Like some people were asking about, is this a legitimate practice for God's people? Should we, put out a fleece? So let's go there. Let's go to Judges chapter 6, and let's talk about this for just a second, okay? So you've got Judges 6. God has been speaking to him, telling him of all the things you're going to do. You look and you'll see that, like, hey, you're going to be a mighty warrior. You're going to, you look at all this in context of all the things that he's going to do, right? But notice you get in context and you begin to see, look at this, that verse 36, if you will deliver Israel by me, as you said, I'll put a wool fleece here on the threshing floor. If dew is only on the fleece and on the ground is dry, you'll know that I'll deliver Israel by me, as you said. And if it's what happened what happened is we got up early in the morning, he squeezed the fleece, wrung the dew out of it, and filling a bowl with water. And he said, don't be angry with me. Please let me speak one more time. Please allow me to make one more test with the fleece. Let it remain dry, and the dew will be on the ground. And that night God did as Gideon requested, only the fleece was dry and the dew was over the ground. Okay, this is what is important, okay? I think sometimes as Christians, we look at the story of Gideon and putting out the fleece. It's common verbiage in Christian circles as like that's a legitimate way to seek God's hand. Here's what I think should be important to recognize. The story of Gideon shows us over and over and over that Gideon was untrusting of God. God had already told him the things that he was going to do. God had already told him how he's going to work through Gideon. And when Gideon puts out the fleece, that is because he's untrusting already of what God wants from him. And so he does. He puts 2 tests out to test and to verify, okay? And that is where I think we should be understanding. Like, I don't think we should read the story of Gideon and say, go therefore and put out a fleece. Ultimately, if we understand the story right, putting out a fleece is saying, I don't trust God enough with my situation and what he's told me, and I need more and more and more. And that, in fact, if you read the story of Gideon, that's just kind of what he has to do. So like there's a time later on in the story where it's ironic that God says, we're going to give you victory over the Midianites, and I want you to go down to the camp. But if you really need some help, I'll send you a young boy to come down with you. So he has to take his servant with him because he's still nervous and untrusting. That's the story of Gideon. He's untrusting over and over and over. So here's what I want to say. Do I think there's a place to prayerfully say, God, help me to understand what to do in this situation? Absolutely. Do I think there's a place to be cautious in decision making? Absolutely. I think that we as a people, though, should get rid of the analogy of the fleece, because the analogy of using the fleece or to try to pulling out the fleece for us, understanding that was a sign of this man's lack of faith and trust in God. He should have obeyed right away. That's there to show us of a weak individual. So I do think we should, we're going to have hard decisions, but God gives you the church. He gives you people to speak into that. He'll give you situations. There'll be things you say, God, look, help me to see this clearly. Help me to understand the situation better. It's never easy. I think some of the hardest decisions for us as Christians are the ones when there's 2 good ones in front of us. Where a lot of people get in trouble is you have one good and one bad, and we want to test God and try to say, force me to do the good, right? And so you better force your hand. But when it's 2 good situations, I think we should be looking, making the list, seeking God's hand and all of that. But we should probably watch how we want to make those decisions when it comes down to it. We're not testing God when we're asking for clarity. But we should not say over and over, God has shown me, and I'm going to keep asking. I'm going to keep asking and forcing him to give me clarity on things. Like sometimes you might just have to make the trust and take the jump with him, right? And let him lead you through it. Okay, I hope that helps answer some of those questions. Like I said, guys, this is awesome. This is the kind of stuff that I'm hoping happens as we're processing the message. Let's talk about it. And if I need to come in here and do a little quick video, and it's like, hey, what about these things? Let's do it. I love this. All right. Love you guys. Talk to you later too. See you later.